Okay, it looks like we're working. So I'm just gonna. All right. All right. I'm gonna start this. We'll just start this thing. See what happens. Oh, does it say we're live? Oh, that's new. I guess I clicked live on the streaming thing, and usually I have to click another button to go live again. But now it's actually connected, and we're live. Hello, we're live. Should be
Oh,
working.
cool.
Let me see if it works. I'll edit this stuff out in the ultimately. But let me see if I can. I lowered my screens too, so I have less. I don't know. Whatever. We'll just. Is this working? Sorry, I'm so dumb. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure. I think it is though.
All good. No worries.
Oh yeah, it is working. Oh yeah. It is working for sure. Okay. All right. Well, neat. Hi, Doctor Nick. How are you?
Yeah, doing okay. How about you?
All right. We've been. It's been several weeks since we did this or did anything. I haven't done any. I don't know. I haven't done any podcast stuff. I feel like my life goes in rhythms, and I was gonna ask about this. Like in bipolar, I think, and they say that you go in these like cycles. You go in these like sometimes like a manic phase will last, like depressive phase will last like 2 weeks, and then you have a manic phase that lasts a few days, and then you have a depressive phase again, or something like that. Does that sound right? Is there something like that?
It's very complicated, but that it can look like that for some people.
That's
Usually, the mania is not quite that frequent
uh huh.
because true mania is so debilitating and
Yeah.
like intense. But it can look like that.
Yes, I mean, like I remember when I was read that and stuff early on, I was like, I don't know. I thought I've had different doctors tell me they don't think I have bipolar for whatever reason, but my dad's like bipolar too, so it was like a something on my radar, and and I don't know. I think I have noticed. I mean, I remember a long time ago, my mom saying like, you go in two. She's like, you'll go 2 weeks, you're depressed or something like that, and then you come back to you know something like normal. I experience a little bit of, I don't know. It's so confusing. Like I'm not gonna put like real labels on it because at this point, who knows if it's ADD? Who knows if it's depression? Who knows if it's just habits? Who knows if it's just me, who I am as a person? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But I have noticed that I go in this like sort of sine wave thing, and I felt like I don't know, something about like this family trip that we went to meet up in Montana. One of my brothers is living in Montana, and it's remote, and family wanted to see each other. It felt like a convention, like we had to see what's up and see what everyone's thinking and like what to do next. And
Yeah.
we ended up very concerned about COVID and stuff like that. We different things changed a lot about it. I haven't seen Allie or the dog in like 3 weeks because she stayed behind because she had to go help her dad out. And anyway, so probably that contributed to it that we're still apart and that I'm like in this sort of like solo zone, like solo headspace zone. And something about that just
Yeah.
perpetuates itself where it's like I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk to anybody. I broke my straight up like fast from Instagram and social media, but I haven't. I don't know. I don't think I've dove back in as hard as I have, which I do think is like a weird poisonous, thing we can rely on to be poisonous. But I don't know. It is weird to something's happening where I don't know if it's like I think I've always been sort of extroverted, or to some degree. Like you can't do this sort of nonsense that I've done professionally without having some extroversion in you. But I also felt like it
Yeah.
never felt extroverted. It felt like a compulsion, or it felt like it was about other people. Like it was about the character you're playing, or it's about the story, the thing you're doing, or it never felt like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing. Look at me. And there's this weird feeling that like whenever you do feel like attention's on you, you wanna go away into a hole. And even if you like fought for the attention and you finally have it, then you're like, I want to disappear. And I don't know, something. I just going through some weird phase that I wouldn't call it total depression. I've really adopted this quality of I don't know, material reality around what we're describing based on things you've said, like based on like no longer just going by like how you feel, like trying to pick a metric, like if it's preventing you from getting out of bed, if it's preventing you from working, like what is your, how do you tell if you're depressed, or these kinds of things. And I definitely think like productivity and that kind of stuff is like less than it's been, but I don't think I'd say like I'm in a full depressive phase. But there's just something that happens where I feel like agoraphobic almost. It's not literally that, because I don't mind going outside. I just don't want to see anyone. Like if I can get away with not leaving the house, I'll do it. Like I just, you know what I mean? Like I just feel like I feel like a dog. I feel like a dog in who is like in the found a nice abandoned house, and I just like want to live in my garbage, And I'm just like, I like it back here.
Yeah.
and like sometimes I'll be like, I found some Chinese food. I'm gonna keep this here too. Like I really feel like like today. My whole plan for Sunday is I got some more work to catch up on, but I finished a bunch yesterday and I'm going to clean for a while. You know what I mean? I just feel like, all right, it's time to clean for a while. And I don't know. So I was curious about, that's a long-winded thing to say like about how I'm doing, but to ask, what is the deal with our like rhythms? And do we just get used to our rhythms? Do we just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a good question. Well, you know, I think there are a couple of ways to kind of frame what you're describing. And so, one of the things I think is always to like do a sort of what you alluded to earlier, like in the beginning of your description, which is to do kind of like a as much as possible, kind of like an objective description of the circumstances. So, okay, like some of the objective description of the circumstances could be things like, and that was, a lot of that was embedded in what you're talking about. But
Yeah.
it could be things like, you just got back from a long road trip to Montana where you saw your whole family, right? And so now you're back here, but your routine has been changed significantly because you're not living with Allie right now. You guys have had to be separate for a number of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You have whatever we all come back with when we, spend a bunch of time with our family as adults, which, you could unpack.
It's so weird, man. That shit got so weirdly unpleasant. The other thing is my sister was there with her, for lack, I would just say husband, whatever. They're not married, but like, I used to say baby daddy, and now it just feels like I'll just say brother-in-law. But like, the weirdest thing is how much we all revert to children, and also in particular, it was like my mom and my sort of like stepdad figure. That she's her guy right now, who I love him. He's part of the family at this point, but like, it's like they'd get in these things, and immediately you feel like a child again with your parents fighting. And then my sister and her husband guy would get in fights, and I'd also feel like a child. I'm like 34 years old, and you would just be like, please no one fight. It's like you turn into like this little baby again. It was so crazy.
Totally. So, I mean, if you think about the sort of exterior circumstances that we know have a profound effect on how you feel, your interior feelings, your interior world, it's kind of makes sense, right? I mean,
sure.
You left your routine that you had kind of gotten used to. You drove to Montana. You had a family get together. These weird feelings come up when there's conflict because you're an adult now, but the childhood kind of responses are so deeply ingrained. You feel that stuff, and then you come back and you're just like fucking tired, and
yeah, that's true.
Isolate a little.
That's true.
Isolate a little bit. So I think it makes sense. Like, yeah, I get it. Like when I come home from a vacation, I also don't want to see anybody or talk to anybody. I want to like
Yeah.
get back into my home routine without being bothered. And any demand on my time from outside feels like a bother, you know?
Yeah.
So I think if you consider those external circumstances and their influence on your interior world, it makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, it just feels
And
like everything is like, oh, go ahead.
well, no, what were you gonna say?
Just that I mean, maybe it's the chaos of everything. I mean, I feel weird too. Like, I mean, I don't even know if anyone's here from the. Oh yeah, what's up, bro? Hey guys. Hey, hello. I was like gonna say, I had this weird routine going too with like the quarantine calisthenics crowd, and we would chat every day on Discord, and hello y'all who are here, and I would do those workouts every day, and then that went to 3 days a week, and then but now I don't know if I've like really exercised in like 3 weeks. I'm like,
Well,
and
dude,
and I just feel like, and like even you guys who are there listening, like I adore you all. I just can't talk to anyone. I just felt like I just can't talk to anyone.
So what you're describing then, like, are removing the pretty kind of key, removing a couple of key elements to your equilibrium. I mean, not seeing Allie, not exercising, not having your kind of like quarantine
Sure.
virtual pod of people, and coming back from a bunch of intense time with your family. Like that
But then,
stuff
but then,
by
what about
itself.
it? Why then? Why don't I want to do it again? You know what I mean? Why do I feel like no?
Well,
I gotta go do something new. I don't know. I gotta throw it out. I can't do it. I can't go back to that. I don't know why. There's some weird.
yeah, I mean, there could be many reasons why. I think
Yeah.
that's if you care to, you could put a theory on there that like fits and makes sense to you. But I think that before spending too much time worrying about why,
Yeah.
I think you know as we've talked about before, the thing to do first is to like do an actual inventory of like what your goals and priorities are. Do you need to take 3 or 4 days and just like not have contact and kind of just be in the Jarrett zone for a while, or maybe you do. Maybe you need like a little mini vacation at home where you just like don't fucking deal with anything. But I would put a date on the calendar of like when you want to
Yeah.
start engaging with the goals that you set for yourself. What are they? What feels achievable? And just start doing them
Yeah.
irrespective of how you feel in the moment. Because, we both know how you'll feel in the moment. You'll feel like you don't want to fucking do them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I tried to. I guess maybe I've taken steps to try to do that unconsciously, then, or maybe consciously. I mean, besides just like I'm gonna clean today. I got like a small part in a movie I'm gonna do, like in friends directing it. It's cool. It's like a very cool, legit movie, but just like a little. She was so sweet. She like texted me. She was like, "Hey, I don't want to offend you. Would you take like a small, like, how small a role? Would you mind just coming? I was like, oh, I'll do craft services every movie. I don't fucking care. Great. But as it's like a nice excuse to be like, you know what? Let's look and feel my best on camera. It's like a month out. So like I paid my friend, or I didn't pay her yet, but I've been hired my friend, who Lizzie, who does all the nutrition. I was like, will you just make me a program for a month, and I'll do just to have something. But I always feel like I do
Yeah,
go in
that sounds
extremes.
like a great idea.
I go like absolute
I mean,
slovenly nothing, and now I'm gonna be like weighing my food. you know?
well, look, I think that's a good idea, and then just all of the other tools that we talk about too, which is like watching your negative self judgments,
Fuck yeah. Okay.
just
You mean
basically
it's not? You
trying
mean it's
to.
not healthy to constantly be like, you fucking piece of shit, and add piece of shit on the end of every personalized thought? That's so true. That's a real thing I do. Like that's the quote. Why are you such a piece of shit? Oh, you gotta clean this place. You're such a piece of shit. Like I don't know why, but it's part of my fucking tapes for sure.
Yeah, and just there are many like exercises that you can do. I think just one of them is like okay, that guy's back and a little bit louder. That guy's kind of in the front right now, so just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Don't let everybody in the club.
Don't let everybody in the club. Is that what you said? Like all the.
Yeah, the bouncer has to pick the right crowd. So
Yeah.
don't just let any motherfucker in there because it happens to be Tuesday.
I feel like I have no internal bouncer. I feel like I have no external bouncer. I always like when I was younger too. I felt like I almost like prided myself on how weird my friend groups, like how much my friend groups were from different groups, and I would put these weird outings or assemblies together of just like very disparate people who like, because I feel like I'm always like friends with people one-on-one,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
but never in like, and then I'd bring these weird groups together. We go to the Renaissance Fair, and I'd be like,
Well, yeah,
hey,
that's
we're
so
having
the
fun.
initial analogy is like be a guard at the palace gate. That's like the DBT.
That's
And I
cool.
like being a guard at the palace gate, but not everybody relates to the fantasy dynamic. So then I would
Yeah,
frame it as be a bouncer at the club.
I know, that's so funny because immediately I'm like, what do I got? Halberd? What am I working with here? Halberd.
Yeah.
I'm a halberd guy
Hold
for
on.
sure. You need that
Hold
hook
on
on
for
the
sure,
back
man.
for, what if somebody comes trying to charge my gates on a horse, I'm going to need that bill hook. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, I like that. No, that's helpful. That is helpful. I don't know. I think as I've gotten older, just like, and definitely talking to you and folks here is like focusing on behavior and behavioral changes and trying to write some stuff on the board.
That was the next thing I was going to say is that, like I totally get trying to understand why this is going on, but understanding why is also a way of just staying put. So it's totally makes sense to try to understand why at the same time that you're going about the activities that are part of your goals. And I would
Yeah.
prioritize those first.
Yeah, the activities that are part of your goals.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I have too many goals, and then I get too like frozen, fucked up about them.
That could be that also could be the case, and like for sure, especially if you're in more of an elevated mood, then you might find yourself with like many goals.
Oh yeah.
I would just pare it down to focus on the important ones and make like for example today you want to clean, and if it were me I would even say I don't even need to clean the whole fucking place. I'm gonna see how I feel after 90 minutes.
That's smart. Usually I just like put some podcast or movie on or something, and I just like I've been I don't know if I'm relying on it too much, but like I have a real do work strategy that involves a movie playing, which is so weird. I don't know why. I was wondering about it because you'd think it'd be distracting, but I've explained it to Allie. The best way I can describe it is like my attention or focus feels like water poured onto a table, and it just goes like this, like all the time. It just goes shh, and that. If I have other input, like just a movie playing in the background, usually an old movie, usually something I've seen already, just like while it's playing, then it does something where like the noise and it just kind of like pushes the water, almost like creates like barriers for the water. Like the extra noise comes in from this side, and then I can do the thing I'm doing in the middle. And it's weird. Like I literally see it like physically in my mind, like where you'd think it would be like a magnetic thing. It really just feels like another more like energetic mass that funnels my focus. I don't know. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
That's become it seems it's probably insane because I have like all these screens and I got like movies playing and usually loud, like I was watching Saving Private Ryan yesterday while trying to like and it's just like and I was like, this causes me peace and I can't explain it.
Soothing.
I don't know.
I don't know, man. I get it. Like I remember I used to like when my first internship was at the inpatient psychiatric unit at the VA hospital in West LA, and it could be a lot sometimes. And I remember I would just like come home and be like blasting like Dropkick Murphys and just feel so
funny.
soothed,
Yeah. I don't know. Well, there's definitely something to that, like sing a sad song to make it better thing, like aggressive music and stuff makes you feel. Maybe it's just because it's cathartic or something like that. I'm just typing in the chat. If you guys have any questions you want to ask away, which I guess I could just say that as well. But like, we've been gone for a few weeks. If anybody has something that's been on your mind, we got like a little bit of time left. Like last afternoon. I don't know. So whatever. I just feel like I've been in this like zone, not terrible, not great. Definitely not exercising. Although I do think there's something, it's weird. I definitely have body dysmorphia, so I'm not going to try to trigger anybody with like body stuff or anything like that. I mean this as like a positive thing, but like I do feel like I've been like, by not exercising and just like basically eating popcorn for dinner every night, like I'm definitely like getting like more dad bod, but like I don't know. Yesterday I was like in a robe and tighty whities, and I was like, hey, I'm a 30-ish-year-old guy who's like kind of in shape. I don't mind it, I have this weird memory.
I've been watching Sopranos with Gina for the first time.
Oh yeah.
It's just like, it's just, I mean, her first time. and it's just great. Like
It's a
the
great
way
show.
Tony Soprano walks around. It is a great show.
Like I'm
Writing is
just
just
like,
so good. The
as a
way
side
Tony
note,
Soprano
yeah. No, go ahead.
like walks around in that robe is just hysterical.
It's amazing. Well, there's
Confident,
yeah, confidence.
confidence.
It
I
reminds
mean,
me of my grandpa. Like my grandpa was when he was younger. I remember I got like the Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding from him because he like had an old like the original copy of Arnold's like, which is a great lifting book if you're into. And like he used to scuba dive and run and do all this shit. But as he got older, like whatever the diet advice that they had then, it was just like he basically lived on like spaghetti with garlic bread and then would snack on like pretzels and beer, like literally, like it was just all they ate were carbs. And you know, and he was like got thicker, you know. I mean, you know, it was actually that was it's weird because you associate body stuff with the people you love, especially when you're a child. I think like my grandpa seemed so strong and like that like now I'm definitely just going off my mind. When he got cancer and I remember when he became frail, it was like so jarring, you know. It was so
horrible. Yeah, that's one of the worst things to see. I mean,
horrible.
dude, peak physical performance, DC heavyweight champ. You know,
Absolutely, no, that's absolutely true. When you hear about like
good cardio.
Well, Kyle was saying this too because Kyle's my brother is like probably one of the strongest people I've ever. I think the strongest person I've felt. Like I think that must be Fedor must feel like that. Like he's just got
Yeah, I
this like
remember when we were grappling one time. Like
yeah.
I think the only time we ever had a roll together, and he had like collar and sleeve, and we were kind of doing the like
Uh-huh.
circling, and I like left my feet as
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was
you can't let
circling
Kyle
the
get a collar
circle.
and sleeve. He does the same thing to
I'm
me.
like,
It like
whoa, okay.
blows my mind. Uh anyway, but yeah, there's a kind of and you look at Kyle and you like be like, "Oh, he's like he's not even that tall. He's like as tall as me, but you just like, "Oh, he's a." I remember somebody called him like he was so happy one day, like some bouncer called him Big Boy. It was like, "Hey, Big Boy," that kind of thing, and he was like, "I'm fucking Big Boy." Did you hear that? You know, but like, you know, he was saying like, you know, I don't think I want to get leaner anymore. Like it's just crazy body stuff. But he's like, I feel like I'm strong. I'm like I can move. I'm fast. But I'm like just because you don't look like you know. And I was kind of like I don't know. I felt like it was a good. I'm always like worried about slipping into like too much dudeness where I'll like never do my goals again or something like that. Some like productivity gremlin in my mind. And I associate that with like body stuff to a certain degree. Like if I'm slacking too much, you know, but like the truth is I think maybe that I'm sometimes more productive and more like good at getting my goals when I like relax all that judgment stuff and I'm just like, hey, I'm actually good. And so I was like, yeah, I felt like I was like walking around in my underwear in a robe that Allie got me that I came home and was here. It was like a late anniversary gift. And some new slippers, which are the best because I had these like IKEA slippers that I wore through, and I just keep wearing them. I just like love wearing these flip flop
Feel
slippers
you
around.
on that.
Dude,
Yeah.
the best. But I don't know, but I was like, you know what? This is all right. I have this weird vivid memory when I was like, this is so strange, but a true memory that I was like sleeping over at a friend's house. It was like the middle of the night, and I came up from the basement or something, and I must have like woke his dad up, and his dad came down to investigate the sound or something, and his dad was down there in like tighty whities, and just had real dad bod, you know? I was like, he was like not like out of shape, but he was like a man in his older 30s who was a dad, who was a little. And I remember having this thought as this little piece of shit teenager who hated my body. I was already like, you know, dealing with like being you know, what I felt like was like a fat kid, and I didn't like I just hated myself, you know, t-shirt in the pool kid. That I was like, oh, look at this guy. I was like, I never want to look like this guy. You know, I never want to like give up my. When I'm older, I'm gonna be a strong old man made out of leather, you know, or something like that. And I was like, I remembered that the other day when I was walking around. I was just like, this is all right. You know what I mean? I was like, this is kind of like a little bit of extra gut here. This is like kind of good, you know? I was like, maybe this is the real me. Like I just feel like I remember somebody saying one time that like they weren't attracted to people with abs because they knew how fussy they'd have to be to have them all the time, you know? You're like, and that it's so much, you know, someone who's like clearly uses their body but doesn't like fuss about it is. And I was like, I don't know. I was having this moment of maybe growth where I was just like, all right, I kind of like this, you know? I kind of like this. I look
Totally,
like
dude.
a happier
Yeah.
person.
Dude, the way that I like the one, I forget where I heard this, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, like this is it for me. That the body should serve the mind, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that really just hit it for me. I was like, God, like, yeah, you know, you want to be, you got to do all the things that you need to do so that you can do all the things you want to do, you
Mm-hmm.
know, which requires maintaining the body. But imagine like your mind being a slave to your body. Like, God, it would just,
Right.
I don't want, I don't want that, you know?
Yeah. No. Totally. I think. Yeah. There's just. I don't know. I get it, and I admire to some degree the people who can do their thing.
I get it. I remember seeing, I was at like a party at CrossFit Sunset when I was like 28 or something, or no, I don't know, 30, which is still like 8 years ago. And there was like some super fit, like, you know, one of the guys was like dating this girl who was a super fit like bodybuilder girl, and she had a glass of wine and then like ate a water pill, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, all right,
Yeah, that's so unpleasant.
this is sick, you know?
It is. That is. I mean, again, like whatever. Should I judge people who? I mean, I just don't know if there is anybody who's like healthfully going about those goals. I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting. Maybe there's this time. That's what I get worried about. And I think again, talking to you has helped me. Like what I was gonna say, I'm worried about is getting too much in my head, too self, sort of judging. Not in the sense of judgment is bad, but too just like obsessed with it, too focused on it.
Yeah.
Like, am I doing the right thing or wrong thing? Am I the right thing or the wrong thing? Am I good or bad? What the fuck is wrong with me? And that sometimes the agoraphobia type thing, I'm like, is that making that worse? But I kind of think taking the focus way off, talking to you is like removes the focus from that, like getting stuck in the like self judgment zone instead of just going to like the doing zone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somebody asked a question. I'm gonna ask for them. Hey Jay, can y'all talk about CPT and what that looks like in comparison to some other methodologies? Is that CBT or CPT?
Therapy? Is that the
What is it? Cognitive processing therapy?
cognitive processing therapy?
Is that what you're
they're
talking about?
referring to?
CP cognitive processing therapy? Does that sound right? We'll find out what they say back. Um, oh no! Well, Rogue's been leading QC since I've been going. I was like, hey guys, I'm gonna take a break. Somebody want to take this over, and they've been continuing it like a few days, which is so. Yeah, she says, yeah, cognitive processing therapy. So we'll come back to it. But I just again, thank you to the QC folks who are doing that, and thank you. I'm just glad you guys have the group and are doing it. I don't know. I hope you don't feel bad that like I just needed to not for a while. I don't know. We'll see. I'll hop in at some point, but I'm just, going through my phase. But anyway, let's go back around. CPT. Oh, Allie. Hello, Allie. We'll ask your question. Oh, that's very funny. Okay. Let's do CPT, and then we'll ask Allie's question. How do you stay on a medical diet that you need to stick to, but you want to rebel against because diet culture is so awful? So that's interesting. We'll talk about it. That kind of ties into some of my stupid body stuff also. But my piece of shit stupid body stuff. Got to add the right, every time. Crazy. Anyway, so yeah, let me ask you about CPT. I've never heard, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, so CPT is another like evidence-based trauma treatment, like prolonged exposure. The evidence is good for both. I mean, like, they're both kind of relatively short term. CPT is like around 12 sessions. PE is like 10 to 15 sessions. The difference is that CPT, like all kind of cognitive based therapies, explicitly focuses more on understanding the kind of stuck points in your narrative of what happened, your cognitive narrative of whatever the index trauma is, and then using cognitive strategies like evidence collection and looking at the impact of your thoughts on your feelings in order to like come up with a narrative of your trauma that advances you past your stuck points.
Mm.
Whereas prolonged exposure, while you do discuss and you do frame the index trauma with a story, is much more explicitly focused on experiencing the fear, disgust, shame, the negative feelings linked to the index trauma, like getting to the point where you want to escape from those and then persisting through them to have the experience of what's called habituation, which is learning that your trauma memory is just a memory. And even though when you first revisit it, it feels as though it's the feelings are as real as the initial trauma, that in fact it's only a memory and you're able to habituate to those feelings to the point where they don't bother you as much anymore. So it's just a difference between a little bit more of a cognitive focus and an experiential kind of emotion focus, I would say, in PE. But I have not done CPT. My training is in prolonged exposure. That I'm certified in prolonged exposure. So I think really it's the evidence is pretty good for both. Again, because I've done a lot of prolonged exposure, that's where my bias is. So I think you need to, if you are looking to do trauma treatment, you just need to see you know, who you click with and who is trained in at least one of these methods and kind of figure out which one is best for you. But they can both be very effective.
So they're both like supported. You would say they're both like.
Uh,
Do you
you
think
have
one of those sounds like it's got more, like you said, more cognitive focus? Like I feel like this is a thought that came up. Like again, I think over the last several months and talking to things like my sort of attitude around what sort of is much more behavioral focused, right? It's much more like, why don't I just try to, we'll change the behaviors and see what's, let's focus on the behavior metrics that I can. And honestly, that's helped me a lot. But I think and probably you as well, just from knowing you, are kind of like doer people. Like we're, activity and something I can measure and something and I've come to become biased and feel like that is more important in general. Like if people are trying to approach their mental health, is like to just focus on the doing of things rather than the feeling and the source of it and this sort of like lay on a couch navel gazing thing. And I can't
Mhm.
even help but think of it as lay on a couch navel gazing thing. But I was gonna say, like, do you think? I mean, are there people? And I know the answer to this is probably like, yeah, there's always people, but are there some people, like, okay, if somebody has a resistance to the doer thing and they're like, I feel like are there some people who talking about the trauma and digging into it and figuring out this memory from when they were a kid and blah blah,
Well,
like, is more functional? You know what I mean?
yeah, it's a good question. So look, I mean, there are different. Even though I think there are core elements of therapeutic approaches that really are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like one would be metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. Or like, kind of adjacent to that would be mindfulness, like observing and describing your own thoughts and emotions without attaching onto them and allowing them to take over your attention without allowing like a sticky thought or feeling to take over your
Mm-hmm.
attention. So observing without judgment, that would be like another core component, I think, of any successful therapeutic approach.
Yeah.
But what we talk about mostly is things like anxiety and depression, and like depression in particular. The most robust treatment for depression is behavioral activation with cognitive therapy and maybe medications.
Hmm.
So someone who is depressed, if they don't do behavioral activation, I've just not seen anyone get better just by a pure cognitive approach
Right.
to real depression. I mean, maybe for somebody who's like just never encountered the idea of non-judgmental observation, the fact that like all of your thoughts aren't necessarily true, someone who's like never encountered that can be like a profound understanding, like, holy shit, I have these thoughts that I like believe, but I don't fucking need to believe them.
Yeah,
That
that's
can be
interesting.
really major for some people, but most of the time requires behavioral activation, doing stuff, because that's how you change the neurophysiological processes of your body, is
Mm-hmm.
by activity with the brain and body. I mean, that's just how it works. Now, when it comes to trauma treatment, again, there are some emerging alternatives, some like emerging kind of body focused and mindfulness focused approaches. There's also some like emerging for actual PTSD uh, and related illnesses. There's some like pharmacological interventions that are emerging that seem to be also effective, but still the best evidence is for these um, basically exposure protocols. And CBT is exposure. If you're writing down the narrative of your trauma, you're exposing yourself to those thoughts and feelings. It is also exposure in the same similar way that PE is. But for trauma treatment, doing the exposure piece, that's where you re-encode the trauma memories that have been disruptively encoded first. So while the activity is important and like part of PE is doing like what are called in vivo exposures, which means like actually doing stuff, like confronting in a scaffolded, controlled way feared activities in your life. Like that's part of it. So the doing is part of it. You also need to go through the cognitive and emotional process of lifting up those trauma memories, experiencing the associated feelings, and then habituating to that distress and overcoming it in the sense of it not like destroying your day and making you devolve into a crying mess on the floor. You have the experience that actually that doesn't happen. I can confront these feelings. So while we kind of can think about that as a cognitive intellectual process, it is also behavioral, because feelings are coming up that you're afraid of. You're exposing yourself to those feelings, you're habituating to them, they're receding in intensity, and then you have a learning experience. So, oh, I'm able to tolerate this. I don't need to be afraid of this, right? So I think that's a little different than like the kind of Freudian, stereotype of like laying on the couch exploring your dreams.
Right. Yeah, it's hard for me to not. I don't. I'm just like an inherently disrespectful person to some degree, and so I think I speak derisively about things that and just in those tones. And I always think it's just being funny, but I don't know. Whatever. I don't mean to be derisive. If it works for somebody, that's great. But all right. Well, that's pretty useful. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that's again, like different problems call for different strategies. Even though I do think there are kind of unifying factors, like including this idea of mindfulness, the non-judgmental observation of what's happening, and also the unconditional positive regard of the therapist, like, and the relationship between the therapist and patient. Like no matter what the issue is, those things need to be present for there to be effective therapy.
Okay, let's I'll do this last question from somebody named Allie Ward, which is so crazy. That's like my girlfriend's name. That's so weird. And also she's doing so that's weird. Anyway, so the question though was, how do you stay on a medical diet that you need to stick to, but you want to rebel against because diet culture is so awful? And there were a few other people who related to this. So someone said that they're trying to do a diet, hopefully help with narcolepsy, which is like an autoimmune thing. And then relates to Allie. I fight the harmful emotions in myself as well as validating it to the world around me. So Allie wrote something funny. Weird coincidence. Let's make out about it. I agree. That sounds great. Okay. But I think this is my initial thought. I've never said this one to Allie either. I just had this thought right now. But my initial thought about it was just like, if you really wanted something to not feel so much societal shame, it's basically the same as like if you're doing a diet which happens to be like don't eat sugar because of autoimmune or because you are hypoglycemic or something like that, blah blah, that kind of thing. Like if you are refusing to do it because you don't like the vibe in society, that's basically like not wearing a mask because of 5G or something like that. Right? I mean, like that's basically like just saying like, I don't care about the science of my body and this thing. I just don't like the social people are going to make me feel weird. Like, oh, why do you care about your body? You're a cool girl. You're not supposed to do that, blah, blah, blah. And then people will be like, dieting is always that. You're just a product of the machine. And why are you doing this? Actually, what you're doing is bad for other women and men and people if you're trying to take care of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But isn't that the same as being like, I don't want to wear a mask because it's a muzzle?
I mean, yeah. Well, there's a couple of things I would bring up. So one is that, very rarely is it possible to have a sustained behavior change as a result of shame or guilt. That typically is not an effective way of like motivating yourself to change behavior long term, right? Because shame and guilt, like it can certainly make you hide behaviors or change behaviors in the short term, but it just rarely works in the long term. So I would first abandon the hope of trying to shame or guilt yourself into some kind of sustained behavior change, and devote yourself to a different strategy. So that's one.
Wait, can I
Two
pause
is
on that? Can I pause on that one
Sure.
thing about that? Not okay, because two thing. Well, I'm gonna add this little question as well. Whatever. I'm just pausing there because generally I agree with you because it's never worked for me. I don't know this person, this Allie Ward who asked this question, but I do know another Allie Ward who might ask a question, whatever, and might be the only person I've met in the universe who shame and guilt does work for, and seems to be constantly fueled and feeling the pressure like a knife at their throat of shame and guilt and anxiety. Not this person, I don't know, but somebody.
Sure,
And
sure.
and sometimes it's like a puzzle because I'm like, if somebody has associated their success and anything good that's come into their life with this shame and guilt, very Catholic, very, anxiety thing, it's really hard to undo it. It's really hard because sometimes these people, no one specific, think if the unpleasantness and the pain goes away, so will all the positively successful things.
Sure.
Which they also added to this note, which I think is related, getting over restricted eating when I felt I had to for appearance was such a victory for me that going back to restricting feels so scary. So I think that ties in again, shame and guilt and stuff. Okay.
Totally makes sense. And I would, if this Allie Ward is not already, I would encourage her to get a therapist to talk through some of these things, as because it is just fraught with intensity. So I think it's the type of thing that merits an ongoing therapeutic dialogue, and you should do that. But in the short term, yeah, of course, yes, there are people for whom the threat of failure or shame and guilt are effective motivators, that knife at the throat. And if it's working for you, go for it. I would just say that perhaps there's an alternative that's a little less painful that might be worth exploring.
Right.
And if not, that's okay. You can stick with what's working. If you want to explore this other thing, I would just do that with the knowledge that it's not going to make you unlearn a strategy you've been practicing for however many years of your life successfully. Adding another tool to the toolkit is not going to result in you losing the ability to use this one. Believe me, it will still be there if you need it.
Okay.
So maybe worth exploring if you want to.
Yes.
And an alternative that's not kind of fear and shame based. Okay, so that's one. And two, I think there are just some things that there's kind of the overarching how I think about this issue, and then there's like the nuts and bolts piece that are related. And the nuts and bolts piece, you've probably already done this, but it's like make it easy on yourself, right? So just don't have things easily available to you that fuck up your medical plan. If you're, if for example, like a high glycemic item is not helpful to your health because of whatever condition, just do not have that in the house. Like don't have it in the house, period. And have the stuff in the house that is going to be helpful. That type of like nuts and boltsy type thing. At the same time, I think you really do have to come up with a narrative that makes sense to you and that you are able to feel okay about. A narrative of why you have to do this, why you're choosing to do it, and the outcomes that you get from doing it and the outcomes that you get from not doing it. And I would, again, try to talk to a therapist so that can help you refine that narrative. And especially when you are in the process of building that narrative, you're going to have all kinds of objections spontaneously come up all the time. And so you've got to come up with a cognitive strategy for observing and describing non-judgmentally those objections without letting them hijack your attention and emotions, validating that they're there in the moment, but then responding to them with your narrative of why, again, like, yes, thank you for the objections. I get those objections, and this is the narrative that I've come up with. This is what happens when I do this. This is what happens when I don't.
What's interesting about it is that it kind of I mean, I've said this before. I really do feel like a lot of everything is just learning everything that you learned in kindergarten over and over again. But this is really just be yourself, and how hard it is to like have your own choices and decisions not be impacted by the outside world. Like to go like, hey, I know everybody else thinks, and I've judged in the past too, that me restricting and like not eating sugar or something like that probably looks like I'm one of those people, like one of those bitchy people and blah blah. Well, I don't care. I know internally and what everyone's gonna think when I
Yeah.
ask if it's gluten free. I
I
don't
mean,
give a fuck.
also,
I have to for my
yeah.
health. Be yourself.
Yeah, the other thing I would think about is to just, if you're like a nice, ingratiating kind of social person, this is really hard to do.
Yeah.
But I would come up first with your own kind of response plan narrative around uh, whether it's important for people who you don't care that much about to approve of your health choices,
I know. That's
and
hard.
and to decide what you're going to do when somebody asks you these questions and tries to force you into this kind of social narrative of whether your choice is something they approve of. And it can be really hard for people to do that. When someone says, "Oh, do you not eat sugar?" and you're like, "Oh God, no, I don't because of this," and you can just say, "I can't for this problem I have, but I don't really want to talk about it because it's
Yeah.
what's going on with you."
Just be
You know,
like, if I do, I die. Just leave it at that.
whatever it
Sorry.
is,
No,
yeah,
just
whatever
kidding.
your style is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of
Whatever your
course.
style is, like that works for you. But if you know that entering into this like dialogue of self justification exhausts you, just don't do that. There's no reason for you to. But anyway, these are
Yeah.
things you have to these kind of trouble scenarios that you're worried about, like your worry scenarios. Those are the kinds of things that you can troubleshoot in good cognitive therapy.
Somebody asked earlier, is it okay that it feels scary? I'm a little confused. Meaning, like,
Of course.
yes. Go ahead, please.
Of
Just
course.
I won't even expand on what it means because I don't really know. But yeah, that behavior change and the scary feeling or whatever. What's that about?
Not only is it okay, it is an indicator that you're on the right track. I mean,
Yeah, because you're in new territory. You're changing something.
yeah, yeah, you're bushwhacking, man. You're bushwhacking. You don't know what's around the corner. So of course it's going to feel scary. Congratulations, it means you're on the right track.
And this might be redundant, but it just occurred to me, and I want to like ask about it again. I guess it was like I knew somebody who once who was sober, like a 12-step sober person,
Yeah.
and I remember they had been sober for a while, and they said they couldn't do mouthwash because it reminded them too much. It was like pouring a drink into a shot glass, and it was just too
Oh,
it
you
like
gotta hit
made.
that right out of the bottle.
Yeah, right.
Mouthwash.
If you're fucking come on, how 12-step are you? Let's be real. No, but you know what I mean. That like there was something about the ritual, and I feel like they just were like, I'm not gonna do that. But I sometimes feel like there's something like that even in this sort of it's there's a lot of poisonous shit about like pizza became this internet thing of like I like just pizza was like this weird meme thing for a while, and like I think the old stereotype of like very conventionally attractive fit people being like I only eat all this bullshit and stuff like that like leads to this thing of like this impossible to achieve, like you should be easygoing and cool and just like eat whatever's in front of you. Like I always think about like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11 is constantly eating. It's like one of my favorite things about the character, but it's like Brad Pitt is eating nachos, Brad Pitt is eating, and there's something that's like weird programming of like, yeah, so you should be like Brad Pitt, like just eat whatever's in front of you, be normal, have fun, be cool, whatever, and also be hot, and that you can do those things at the same time. And
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
this obsession with being a
Yes,
cool
I
girl.
totally know what you mean. I think those are look. Also, I think this is kind of the guard at the palace gates thing. A little bit is
Guard
like
at the palace
that's
gates.
all complete fucking nonsense. It's all
Totally.
nonsense. Like you have to just. I mean, don't waste your time falling in the social trap of the assumption that somehow our intake of food is a moral characteristic that can be policed by our acquaintances. It's just
Yeah, dude.
ridiculous nonsense. Like, fuck all the. It's all nonsense. It's all marketing bullshit. Just don't allow yourself. I mean, you're gonna, you're being bombarded with this programming all the time. So of course it's gonna infiltrate your psyche. How could it
Mm-hmm.
not? That's totally fine. That's not a moral failing either. It's just when you notice it come up, let's like remove our attention from that because it literally has zero benefit. So
Yeah.
the other thing I would just say though about the restricting is, you know, Restriction is a morally loaded judgment term.
Right.
There are lots of other ways to accurately characterize what you're doing. Like, I don't eat dairy because it makes me like poopy and gross. Am I restricting myself from dairy? I mean, I just don't experience it that way. It's just
What do you
something
experience
that
it
if I
as?
put in my body, I know it has this effect. Am I restricting myself from ice cream? I just do not experience it that way.
I
I
mean,
really don't.
you're restricting yourself from ice cream as much as you're restricting yourself from poopy and gross.
Look, I just don't even experience it as restrictive. Another
What do you
thing
what
is
do you
like I
experience it
kind of like
as?
to
How do you feel about it?
I just don't think about it. I'm like,
Uh
oh, if
huh.
I eat that, I'm gonna feel bad, so I don't eat it. No, it's like
No, but that's how
alcohol
you
too.
think about it.
Sometimes,
That's actually even what you just said. That is how you think. That's very. I know that's like I'm harping on this thing, but it's subtle and it's weird because I was just thinking while we were talking about all this was like I think, and this maybe gets back to the cognitive behavioral stuff and the sort of ability to reflect and pay attention to what you're feeling. I think something that happens for me is feeling is just feeling, and I can't tell the difference between shame and guilt feeling and literal physical bloat and discomfort feeling. Unless it's like literally tearing up my asshole. And so that takes an extreme to get to there, though. And so I think sometimes it's hard for me to differentiate between like, dude, I don't like how I feel because of what I've been eating right now physically, and I shouldn't have to feel this way. And my brain just goes like, oh, don't be such a bitch about it. That's shame. Just eat whatever you want. And being able to differentiate
yeah,
between like, no, I just physically don't want to feel so fucking shitty all the time.
yeah, and I part of me is like, those might not be even the most meaningful differences. Like
Yeah.
unless it's
But that's what I'm
purely
saying.
cognitive.
That's what's
Yeah,
hard to
but
figure out. They might not be the most meaningful differences. Is like, I guess goes into your calculations. Is like which one's more important to me to try to mitigate the feeling of like, do I want to feel bloaty and gross and falling asleep all the time and my gut hurts all the time or whatever? But at parties, people think I'm cool and normal. Or do you know what I'm saying? Like, if
yeah.
that shame is big enough, it's like it's at a weight of what's more uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is also why I think there's like, we're kind of having a little bit of flippant problem solving, but that's
You
the
can't help
nature
it.
of the
Yeah.
format. That's why I think it is important to have like an ongoing dialogue with somebody who you trust who can help you. But the idea that, the kind of abstract idea of social judgment around your personal behavioral choices in order to optimize your feeling good, you really have to vociferously fight back against those because
Mm-hmm.
they don't help you at all. And also, people don't really fucking care. If they do care, that says a lot about where they are and very little about where you are.
Yeah.
So I just think you have to have a rhetorical strategy for limiting your exposure to that. Anyone who wants to go in deep on your dietary choices has something going on that they need to address. And you can just say, look, man, this is boring for me to talk about. Let's just fucking talk about something else. You know? That's the way I
Yes.
think.
Yes. No, I think that's exactly right. It is hard. I think the other thing is to realize, at least in my experience, the flippant thing, that word is like, it's also experienced flippantly. I think sometimes other people are doing it flippantly, and you are looking for a voice to reinforce the guy that kills your palace guard. Like, like you know what I mean? Like, there's something in you that's like, I'm going to do my best thing. I'm going to do my best thing. I hope nobody judges me about this. I don't want to be one of those fucking people, blah, blah, blah. And so you're so worried about it that as soon as somebody says something like, okay, oh, you don't eat gluten, oh, you don't eat sugar, okay, but you're so skinny, oh, that kind of thing, immediately you're like, I've been waiting for that, so I have an excuse to go like, see, I don't want to be that piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? When they just said it, they don't care. They're not going to think about, you know what I mean? They're going to go. And if they do, like you said, it says a lot more about that other person and their need to obsess over other people and their choices than about you. It does seem very challenging to stay in your own truth, especially around issues that become politically loaded. And it feels like this day and age, everything is politically loaded. Like literally everything is politically loaded. You know what I mean? I feel like I can't be like, I really like sushi. When I was 3 years old, my dad had done some study abroad in Japan, and sushi was my favorite food. And they'd say, do you like sushi? What do you want to eat? And I go, sushi, because I feel like I'm appropriating something. Because it's political now that when I was 3 years old, I liked sushi. Do you know what I mean? Like everything
Yeah.
feels political now. I don't mean to like, I don't really think that I'm not like some weird alt-right reactionary or something, but I do feel like it feels like every personal choice you want to make, maybe because we're so interconnected on social media, blah, blah, feels like some political weight to it. And it's so hard not to it's so hard to just go like, also address your own life and be like, yeah, I don't want to contribute to a culture
Yeah.
of negative body reinforcement stuff, or I don't want to do advertising for the diet industry, but also I've seen what sugar does, and I know there are studies that say all these different things out there, but what I've learned about my body is these studies seem to be right for me, you know?
Well, I just think it's like who. I mean, when it's a close friend, I think you have the dialogue anyway. But when someone's like, "Well, why are you doing that?" You're like, "Because I feel better, and I also don't care what you think." I mean, like that's it, you know. So I think you got to come
Someone
up with
said I
whatever.
experienced that so hard when I was vegan. People spent so much time trying to explain why my choices about my body were wrong. Yeah,
I think you
totally.
just have to say, "Stop! I don't care. I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
I don't care." Like, forget. I mean, one of my friends was he's like a college baseball coach, but he was a referee, a little league referee, and like people would just complain about everything. The dads would be screaming at him, and literally every game he would just say, "I don't care, man. I don't care. I don't care." That's all he would say. It would just say, "Can't you see?" Blah blah blah, and he would just say, "Listen, I don't care." That's all he would say,
So
and
good.
eventually people just get it. You know, if people are coming after you so hot about that, that might be what I would say.
Dude,
You got to
yeah.
come up with what's right for you, but it's just not a dialogue worth entering into. You've made the decision, you know the effects. You don't need to explain it to fucking people.
Yeah.
But also, the other side of that is that, you know, if you're going to talk about it on the internet or whatever, then just know that people are
Yeah.
going to do what they do on the internet, which is
Totally.
troll you about it. So
Oh, yes.
strategic. If it's not an important part of your personal identity that you need to share with people, then don't and just do it.
Dude, there's that I don't care thing made me think of. I'm probably quoting it wrong. It burned in. It's one of those memories that I remember seeing one clip of it. I could probably go find it. I don't know. It was this clip of a UFC thing where Jackson, who's the coach Jackson? George St. Pierre's. You know what I'm talking about?
He Jackson Wink, but
Yeah, I think. Well, whatever. That guy. I think it was.
St. Pierre's with that other guy in Canada.
No, who's yeah the Canada guy. Well, George St. Pierre's coach. What's his name? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know.
It doesn't matter.
Is it Farad something? I
No,
know
maybe he's
exactly
with
what you're
Fahad. No,
talking
he's with him now. Anyway, Faraz Sahabi. He's with not him though. I think it was old coach Jackson. Anyway, doesn't matter. The point is, there was this clip from an MMA fight, and it was like early on when you could hear their coaching when they would like put the you could hear the between rounds what they were saying. And this is how I remember it. I don't think this is quotable like correct, but the memories last with me long enough that I like it. Was George St. Pierre in the round they had just fought, like fucked his knee up or something bad. Like he was and he's sitting there on the stool, breathing really hard, sweating, with his coach in front of him, who's like fixing him up and giving water and checking him, giving him and I remember George St. Pierre going, my leg hurts, because he's French Canadian. He goes, my leg hurts, like that, because he was fucked up. And I remember the coach like going, listen to me, I don't care, work the jab, da da da, And I was like, dude, that guy loves him, There's this moment of like, that coach loves him to tell him, I don't care. And I've always hung on to that like you can have a very loving I don't care from somebody that like a guard dog is like, you need to survive these next 6 minutes. I don't give a fuck about that hurt leg. Yeah, afterwards he's
Yeah.
gonna care. He's his coach. He's gonna like want to make sure he gets rehab, whatever he needs. But he's like, you got the next 5 minutes. You gotta survive and win. Hopefully, someone who's one of the best fighters in the world trying to kill you. And I don't know. I was that moment was like, again, I think I quote it wrong or whatever, but it's burned in my brain as this like, maybe because I felt like I never really had it. I did, maybe because I don't have the inner voice for myself, but there's something about that, a loving I don't care coach who will pick the right moments to say the thing you're worried about doesn't fucking matter, or it does, but this other thing matters a lot more right now, and because I care about you, I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you to dismiss it.
Yeah, I think so. To kind of bring this around, I would say it makes total sense that if you have to do some particular like diet for your health, um, That's going to be like really fraught because it's such a topic in the culture. It's so moralized, it's so heavily marketed, people love to judge it. So I think you have to get real comfortable with your own inner narrative about why you're doing that. I would try to come up with an inner narrative that's apart from this idea of restricting, because that's really not what it is. It's really, and yeah, you can think of it that way if you want to, but the other way to think about it is about optimally selecting the things that make you feel good. I mean, to me, that has different connotations.
Yeah, that's nice.
And you also, I think, unless you want to have this fight every time it comes up, I would just completely abandon the fight of trying to justify that to strangers and society at large. I would just not talk about it in a way that exposes you to the silly beliefs of people you don't care about. Like, who
Yeah.
fucking cares about them? So you just have to abandon that fight. And does that mean you're going to hear like dietary microaggressions that you don't respond to? Yeah, it does mean that. Or you can make the choice to fight every battle. But I don't really
Yeah.
think there's a middle ground. If there is, that's great, and maybe you can find that.
Yeah. Not I'm sorry, I'm always like making like fighting analogies, but it does occur to me that this thing happens when you get better at fighting and you do it a lot and you work it out in your life, that like you don't get in fights because those microaggressions don't matter to you. Like people, do little things and you're just like, "Oh, okay." You know what I mean? Like something happens where I guess what I'm speaking to is probably you're at a level, if you haven't cultivated the tools to feel you've worked out why you're troubled over it, why you're conflicted over it, which would be the equivalent of like learning how to fight. I'm afraid. I get in fights because I'm afraid, and I overreact because I don't know how to deal with it. But if you've worked out how you react to those aggressions, like you're just like, oh yeah, they just don't even bother you. They're like, it would be like being a grown up and a 3-year-old, 4-year-old child is crying at you because they want the candy or something like that, and you just don't. It doesn't even bother you because you're like, oh yeah, you're. This isn't real in that sense. That like there's something about if you can get that training in your body, the habit, that like maybe that stuff, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like I don't care as a habit,
Totally. And I think,
a skill set.
whatever that's going to look different for different people, but the nuts and bolts pieces of making it easy on yourself, you know, that's important. Like, again, just the like the stimulus control, like putting yourself in situations where you're not getting a stimulus that you then react to that's real
Mm-hmm.
negative for you.
Yeah.
Um,
I know we're running
what,
over
what
here,
kinds of
so
food do you have in the house?
yeah, I'll get us out of here real quick. I just want to ask this last. Somebody, Rogue had this last little. I've never spoken up for myself in that scenario. Maybe I'll make that my goal the next time someone makes a shitty comment to me. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say yes, sure, but also, aren't you kind of saying like maybe part of the, if that helps you, great. If it helps you to get the fight to do it. But isn't part of it to be able to go like, why I don't even need to rise to it. I don't even need to respond if somebody says a shitty comment, to just feel
Totally
like, all
depends.
right.
It totally depends on what is going to work for the person. Both things might work in different scenarios. I would just, like to Rogue in particular, I would just say make sure that your goal is one that is achievable based solely on your behavior. So, you know, if your goal is to
Mm,
respond, then the goal should just be that you responded, not to get a particular response from someone else. Like the success or failure doesn't depend on the other person's response because you have no control over that. It's did you say it in a way that was consistent with your goals? And also just know that whenever you rehearse a new behavior, you're probably not going to be that good at it. In the same way that the first time you try to play a piece on the piano, you're probably not going to be that good at it. The first time you introduce a new behavioral skill, you're probably not going to be that good at it. So the goal, if it were me, if I were your therapist, I would be telling you, if this is your goal, the goal is just to get over the emotional hurdle of making the effort. That's the success. So whether it comes out well or not doesn't matter. How they respond doesn't matter. It's just, did you confront your own anxiety about saying something in that moment? That's the success metric.
yes, that's very good. Because I agree, that's something I thought about a lot. It's like if you're gonna do your big confrontation with somebody who hurt you or whatever, just know that there's a good chance you're never gonna get the response you want from them. You're gonna say your big speech, and they're just gonna get right back into that whatever shitting. It's just gonna never stop. And I think that's so true. It's so hard to wrap your mind around. Like, no, it can't be about the response. If you get it, what a gift. If one day your parent comes to you and is like does all the apologies and all the things, oh, amazing. But you it seems like we have to take control over our own self and never predicate it on somebody else giving me the right response.
Yeah, and you got to just find the one that's right for you, whether it's like, whatever it is. You got to find that kind of response that's right for you. Like, I'm sorry my gluten-free muffin triggers you, bro. Like,
Yeah,
weird.
that's funny.
Or whatever, or like, a serious, like, hey man, don't police my diet, or just like, if I eat it I die, whatever.
Yeah, dude, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Or gluten spreads corona, whatever you want.
Yeah,
to
that's good.
say,
Look, gluten. I don't eat gluten because it makes 5G. It eradicates my third eye a lot more. What happens is 5G drives gluten molecules and it creates a gluey mess over the calcification of my pituitary gland.
Whatever it is. I mean,
or I like the police one. I like the hey, diet police. Didn't you know all cops are bastards? You're defunded. Thank you. I feel good about that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. I think these are great. So
right,
come up with what's going to work for you.
Yeah, I like it. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks for staying 15 minutes extra. It was fun to be back. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do our best to resume this, I suppose. It feels nice to get out of my hole for a little bit. And I love you all very much. Thank you for continuing to do QC. Oh, and last thing I'll just mention, Rogue, in a message to me, rose the thought and possibility. I briefly spoke to Dr. Nick about it. We'll talk more about it, of kind of figuring out some kind of maybe a virtual group therapy type thing. I don't know the rules and if we could actually do something like that, but we'll talk about it. It would be the equivalent, I assume, of sort of what I've done with Al-Anon, where you just sit in we'll figure out. I don't know what it was, but if that was something that interests you, creating maybe a once a month or something where we could sort of experience a kind of virtual group therapy type thing. Dr. Nick said that he would talk about possibilities and maybe we could try something.
Yeah, I think we would have to talk more about it, but
yeah. But I guess I'm just saying right now to say if that's something that would interest you participating in, just to gauge, send me a message, say something, whatever, and so I'll get a sense of if it's even a thing to pursue. All right, thank you all so much. You can check out patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain if you want to support there, and it's on iTunes and Spotify and all those things. We'll put it all out, and listenologies as well as usual. Okay, you guys are the best. Let me end this. We got a new system. All right.